Now we're going to talk about your guys' video assignment. You should already have hopefully shot all your videos, so you have video of 2 interviews that you've done, and you have enough B-roll to fill up a minimum of 2 minutes and no longer than 4 for this feature project. So I'm going to walk you through how to edit your assignment using Adobe Premiere on the Creative Cloud. And this is the software that's available in the journalism labs, and you can download it from IUPUI as well. You're going to start out by selecting a new project when you start up the software. So just go ahead and name your project, and also select the folder that you want to keep it in. So make sure that the capture format is in HDV, and other than that, you should be good to go. Just hit OK. So you're just going to bring up your editing suite, and just to review, this is going to be your editing window here, so you can drag your clips up to this section, and you can then drag them down here after you've selected the video that you want to use. And then this is going to be your output window. This is going to show you what your video is looking like when you've got it on the timeline down here. As it plays on the timeline, it's going to play up in here. And then over in here are the different options that you have for editing that video. So we are going to start out by importing our video. So go up to File and down to Import, and just select the video that you want to use. So I'm going to use the video clips that we used in class for our demonstration. They'll pull them up over here in this window. So the first thing you want to do to start building this out is to start with your interview clip and drag it up to the top. And that would not be our interview clip. There's our interview clip. So once you get your interview clip in here, you're going to want to splice out the sections of the video that you want to use. So you're going to want to listen through it, and you're going to want to identify the pieces that you think will work best. So I want to find something about, this is about from selections for the women's basketball tournament, and they're educating coaches on the process. So I want to find a comment that she has, that this coach has about that process. So I'm going to listen to it, and at the beginning here, there's a comment that I want to use.
Sue, first question. I know it's a little bit early in the process so far, but some things you hope to learn coming to Indianapolis for this exercise.
So I'm going to find the section I want to use here.
There are a number of things that I have hoped to learn.
Okay, well, that's a good starting point. We want to take out all the other stuff there that we know is just going to get in the way.
There are
Take out the and then down here these brackets are going to let you select the left and right side of the clip that you want to clip. So go ahead and select that, and let's finish out the comment.
That I have hoped to learn, and just the process itself. You know, I'm a basketball coach, and so I worry about coaching my team and teaching them how to shoot a right-hand layup, left-hand layup, and offense and defense and all that. And at the end of the day, you know, we get to a point in the season, and as coaches and as fans and as just onlookers, we always wonder how this whole process works. And so for me, just taking it from top to bottom and inside and out has been an eye-opening process, and it's been a fantastic process so far.
So we're going to leave it right there, and we'll select our right side clip now. So this is our clip that we're going to be using. Now we're going to click on it and drag it down into our sequence area, and it's going to lay it out on the video 1 and audio 1 track. So this is going to be our primary track that we're going to work with. Now, any B-roll that we lay on here, we're going to want to lay on the video 2 or video 3 track. And that way, that video will overlay the interview, so that as we're playing it along, we want people to be able to see the action in the room and not the interview. That will play first. Now, one thing to note, when you lay down your B-roll, in a lot of cases, if you want audio from your B-roll at all, it's going to lay it down on the audio 2 track, and you're going to need to select this S over here to be able to turn on and off the sound. Otherwise, the sound will play over the audio one soundtrack and will get in the way of your interview. Sometimes it's not a bad thing to be able to have some natural sound playing in the background, so you want to know how to do that so you have that option. But for the purposes of this project, you're probably not going to need that sound. So another option that you can use is to just drag the video only using this icon here. And you can drag it down here, and that will only drag the video. It will not drag the audio. So now that we've got our clip cropped, we want to be able to fill this out. And so we have about 34 seconds of video to cover up. We're going to want to leave a little bit of that for her talking, but for the most part, we're going to want to fill this up in 3 to 5 second segments of B-roll. So let's go back over to our video library. I'll pull up a clip, and we're just going to crop out some different B-roll selections that we can then use. So let's just go ahead and set our marker, and let's cut a 5-second clip of this guy. And drag it in. And you can see you're not going to be taking up a lot of space with your B-roll, so you're going to want to be able to get a few different things. Now remember, when you're doing this, to think about setting up an establishing shot when you're first setting up your video. And that's going to be your wide shot, one of the 5 shots that we talked about. That's going to be able to show people the setting of the room or where they're at, so that you kind of have an introduction to the video so people can know what is going on, or they have a clear idea of that. So let's take a 5-second clip of this. And I'm just going to drag the video on this one, which I didn't do on the other one, but that's okay, because I'll just turn the sound off on that. So now I have a 5-second clip of this shot, have a short shot of this guy, and we can drag some other video from this to be able to fill this out. So now we have kind of another wide shot that we can come back to of people in the room. And we'll drag out another 5-second clip. And I may not use all 5 seconds of this, but I would at least want to be able to drag down enough that I can fill up my space. So, because you can see now I have three B-roll clips, and this is going to fill up pretty closely. So the next step, as you laid out your B-roll and kind of have an idea of what B-roll you want to use, you need to establish or create a lower thirds caption for the people you're interviewing. Everybody you're interviewing has to have a lower thirds caption when you're doing videos for newspapers or website or any kind of news-based media. You need to be able to tell people who the person is you're talking to and what their position is, just like you would in a story. So the way you do that is you go up to Title, New Title, and Default Still. Select that and give a name for your title. Give a name for your title that you will be able to identify the different clips. So it's more helpful to be able to name them by their actual name. So it's going to give you a still of what you're looking at here, or the clip that your timeline is your sequence is on at the time that you select this. So if there's a specific part of the video that you need to be checking, make sure that you're actually creating a still on an overlay of that section of the video that you're going to be using. Get your text tool, and down here in the lower corner of the video, go ahead and type your text tool and type out the person's name. Now, fonts are going to make a difference on how well this shows up. I typically like to use Helvetica, just something that works for me, but feel free to use whatever you think looks good. Helvetica tends to be a pretty professional, classy font, very widely used. And then when I'm using lower thirds for names on the name line, I'll click the small caps line here, and I'll reduce it to about 48 points, a 48-point font. I also, there's a couple options that you have to be able to make it stand out. Your text may have a hard time showing through on the video. You can use some of these styles down here. Sometimes they will make your titles stand out a little bit better. You might just try starting out though by just bolding the titles. That might be enough to make it stand out. Now, this is good for your name line. So now on another line, you want to type out the person's title. And what I generally will do for this, get it spaced out a little bit, get it lined up with the previous line. But for the second line, I generally like, there we go. I generally like to make it oblique so that it's essentially italicized, and then unclick the small caps just to make it look a little bit different. And you might want to make it, I find that usually this will make it small enough that you don't have to, that it won't look awkward, but you can also reduce the font size of this if you need to, if you think that the styles are competing too much. So now when you have your lower thirds created, click the box, and it's going to create another asset down here with your video clips. And you treat this just the same way you do your video clips. You just click and drag it over to somewhere on your timeline where you want this to show up. Now, one challenge that you want to think about as you're putting these things together is how do you want to introduce your video? Do you want to start out with the interview, or do you want to start out with B-roll? And I'd say let your interview dictate that. If you have a good interview starting out, you can certainly introduce the person with a B-roll. When you do that, you might want to start out, go to your effects folder, and this is where you're going to get several different transitions here so that you're not just suddenly flashing on the scene with things. Sometimes you might want to come in with a little bit softer effect. You might want to be able to fade in and fade out, and the video transitions will help you do that. If you look in the dissolve folder, you're going to find a cross dissolve, which will help you transition between clips when it's necessary. This is really important when you're transitioning between interviews directly and you're not having B-roll to cover up the transition. Sometimes that will help kind of smooth that out, but not always necessary. Where it's really helpful, though, is with your titling sequence. The cross dissolve, you can click and drag it up here and place it at the beginning and at the end of your cross dissolve. And you'll see when we come back to our interview here, the titling fades in and then fades out. So it creates a nice little even transition here. You can do the same thing with your B-roll clips, but not as necessary. It'll fade into the clip if you feel like your video needs that, if you like that look. But certainly not necessary. You can jump back and forth and it'll be fine. An additive dissolve is something that can start out your video by fading it in at the beginning, so that if you want kind of a nice soft touch at the beginning, if you're going for something emotional, an additive dissolve can help to start up the video. Or if you're starting out with some kind of titling sequence, as you're giving a title of your video at the beginning, the additive dissolve or cross dissolves can help to transition you between those clips. In this case, I think I'm going to start out with a section of B-roll with my establishing shot. Oops. Let's go with my establishing shot down here. So here we're showing the room or what's going on. And so I want to start out with about 3 seconds of B-roll. So I'm going to set my marker right there so I know exactly how much I need to cut back. And I'm going to pull this in. So I'm going to start out by introducing the room and then getting my coach involved here. Now I need to place my titling box so that it'll introduce her. I want to wait at least probably about a second before I pull that in. So at 2:24 or so, 3 seconds, we're going to cut to this woman. I'm going to give her about a second there, and then I'm going to move my B-roll in. and that's going to include my titling. So you can see as I'm coming in here, now I get the coach, titling now fades in, titling fades out. I'm going to give her about 3 seconds to speak. So, or maybe we'll say about 5 seconds to speak. So we'll go up to about from 3 seconds to 7 seconds. Or let's make it 8 seconds so we can actually do math. I'm going to let her speak for about that point, and then I'm going to drag over my other B-roll. So again, following the five shots rule, we're going to start out with video of these folks, and then we'll come in for a close-up of one of our basketball coaches watching the show. And he's going to cut over. And now let's get another piece of B-roll to cover that up. So we've gone wide, we've gone close up. Now we can go back to wide from a different angle. So that we're moving the camera around the room, or we're giving people some different perspectives. So we're going to get about 5 seconds of this. Set our marker, drag just the video in. I'm going to set this down about right here. And that's going to leave us about 5 seconds to close. So here we've put together a basic sequence, and we can watch it. Starting out with our establishing shot, we're now cutting over to our coach. Now cutting over to our wide B-roll, cutting in for a close-up in a couple of seconds. And you can see this shot is taking a long time to develop here. Cutting into our basketball coach, coming back out to a wide, and coming back to our coach.
It's been a fantastic process so far.
So let's watch that again with the sound.
There are a number of things that
So our coach is talking,
to learn.
titling comes in,
And just the process itself. You know,
titling
I'm
fades
a basketball
out,
coach,
and
so
we
I
switch to
worry about
B-roll.
coaching my team and teaching them how to shoot a right-hand layup, left-hand
Coaches
layup,
who are
offensive
watching.
defense and all that.
And again,
at the
this
end of
clip,
the
this
day,
B-roll clip, I would cut it
we
down
get
much
to the point in the
further.
season, and
You want to keep
as
people
coaches
moving
and
around
fans
as much as
and
possible.
onlookers, we always wonder how this whole process
Fading
works.
back out.
So for me, just taking it from
And then
top
coming
bottom,
back to our
inside
coach.
and out has been an eye-opening process, and it's been a fantastic process so far.
Now, the thing you can do to close out, you can use those transitions again. I like to do this with a dip to black at the very end. So you drop it there, drag out,
It's been a fantastic process so far.
and it closes out your video nicely. Now, one thing that if you want to do, if you want to be able to put some, give some credit to who did the video, again, you can use your titling so that you can actually put in here your name and be able to show who did this video. You can line it up with the crosshairs at the top. And now close it out. Go back to your project. You'll find your title back here. Line it up now at the end. Now when you do this, don't you put your dip to black here. What you'd want to do is go back to your effects. And this is one place where that cross dissolve comes in very handy, is you put your cross dissolve here. Now put your dip to black at the end. And now, when you close out your video,
Fantastic process so far.
it transitions to your credits, and then it dips out and closes out the video. That is the basics of what your video project is going to look like, how your B-roll is going to get together. Everything you need to be able to complete this assignment is in here. You'll basically just create a series of these little snippets to fill out 2 minutes to 4 minutes of a feature video. So just follow this instructions and you'll be able to get through all of that. When you're done, you're going to need to render your video. So render effects in to out under the sequence menu is what you want to do. Select that.
There are a number of things that I have hoped to learn, and just the process itself. I'm a basketball.
Oh, I'm sorry. Render in to out is the video that you want, and this is going to render all of your clips. And as you see, this line down here, this green line, is going to fill up where this yellow. Anything that's in yellow is not rendered. Anything in green is rendered. And so this is going to draw out or prepare your video for exporting. It's basically like digitizing the whole thing. We're ready for export. It can take a few minutes, even for just a 30-second video. But as you can see here, it's taking the better part of a minute just to complete this. But once it's completely rendered, you'll be ready to export. Now we're ready to export. Go ahead, go File and Export Media. You're going to want to make sure your format is selected to H.264. Again, that's a web-friendly compression. That's high definition. And then you're going to want to make sure this is set to NTSC under TV standard. You can see here you're in high definition, 1920 by 1080, and you're all set to go. So once you've verified these settings, just hit export and you'll be all set to go. So that's all you need to be able to produce this video assignment. If you have further questions, feel free to email me. But otherwise, this should get you to the end of this assignment, get your video made. So have fun producing your videos, and can't wait to see them in class.